Good afternoon and welcome to the latest in our series of live career webinars brought to you by the Hertfordshire Opportunities portal, that is hopinto.co.uk, which is a website that we hope many of you will be familiar with, or at least familiarise yourself with, because it is a website designed for young people, students at schools and colleges, specifically those of you in schools and colleges in Hertfordshire, to provide a whole wealth of information about a variety of different careers that are relevant to Hertfordshire's jobs market. Now, the purpose of this webinar today is to inform you and to inspire you about a career in the growing industry of data analysis. Almost got it wrong then. So we have got two fantastic panelists with you today who are going to share their very own experiences and talk to you about their own particular roles and just try and enlighten you really about what a career in data analytics might look like. So without any further ado, let me hand over to Nina first of all, and then Sam, who can tell you a little bit more about themselves and about the roles that they do. So good afternoon, Nina.
Thanks, Gareth. Hi, everybody. My name's Nina Janda, as you can see on the screen, and I'm the CEO of an organisation called Global Health Data at Work. And what we do is we compare the way that patients are treated across different countries. So when you go into hospital, there's a whole bunch of information that the hospital will gather about you. And then what we do is compare that information across different countries and try to figure out which hospitals and which countries are treating patients in the best way possible, and then allowing other hospitals and other countries to learn from them.
Okay, and this is something we'll go on to explore, Nina, but this is something that I guess is even more prominent now than perhaps it's ever been in the past over what's happened in the last 15 months or so. Thank you. Good afternoon, Sam.
Thanks, Gareth. So I'm Sam, again, as you can see on my screen. I am a senior analyst in the supply chain development and change team within Tesco, which is a heck of a mouthful. I've been with Tesco 10 years now. Most of that time was in the operations team, so dealing with sort of day-to-day forecasting and ordering. But I've moved across to the change team, as I said, which is very highly focused on analytics.
Okay, thank you. So we'll unpack that as we go through this webinar. So, well, for those of you that are watching live, so this session on Thursday afternoon, if you're watching live, first of all, well done for taking the time out of your time at the end of school to come and listen to this webinar. So what we want you to be able to do through watching this is not only hear from Nina and Sam and listen to their experiences, but you've got the opportunity to ask your own questions. So if there's anything you're unsure about or something you'd like to know a little bit more about, you can do that. And the way that you do that is on your dashboard that you've got in front of you. You'll see there's one that is called questions. So if you click on that questions tab, it will open it out and then it will provide a text box. You can enter your question in there. It's only visible to me, and then I will forward it to Nina and or Sam. So please take the opportunity to ask those questions, and then it's a really good encounter or an interaction for you to have. Just to reassure you, we can't see or hear any of you that are watching this webinar at the moment, but hopefully you'll be able to see and hear us fine. We are recording this session, so if you're not able to stay through at the end of it, or if you found it really interesting and want to watch it back, or even if you've got a friend or a family member who you think would really benefit or would enjoy watching this as well, you can share it with them. I'll share where you can find those later, but they are all on our HOP website, so you can see our web address there. You can see our social media handles as well. They will be all available via our YouTube channel from probably tomorrow morning. So we are going to press on with the webinar. Thank you. So for those of you that registered for this, you may have submitted some questions already, which we've tried to incorporate into the initial conversation, but do keep your questions coming as we go through. We've got a fairly set structure which we're going to start with, which hopefully will begin to answer a lot of your questions. So we're going to think about what a data analyst actually does. So, well, Nina, let me come to you first. Can you tell us, what is a day in the life for you in your role?
So I suppose my role is slightly different from Sam's, not just because the industries are slightly different, but also because my job is predominantly about analysing what the data is telling us rather than actually analysing the data in terms of actual numbers. So for me, for instance, yesterday I spent the day with a whole bunch of healthcare leaders from different countries talking about the effect that COVID has had on patient care. and we were particularly looking at A&E numbers. So as there are less people presenting with COVID, you have to remember that there's a whole bunch of people that haven't been treated. And so what we were trying to figure out was, who are those people? Are they the same people across the different countries? And how are countries treating those people? So that would be pretty much an average day. Generally, I'll look at the data, look at where there are issues, and then bring in the right people to talk about those so that we can try and find a way to solve those problems that are occurring in patient care.
Sure. Okay. So I mean, just to clarify, how do you get the data in the first place? So where does it come from by the time that you start looking at it?
Yeah, so basically what happens is when you go into hospital, so for instance, if you went into hospital with a heart attack and you were seen by a cardiologist, and then whilst you're in hospital, say you fell over and you broke your hip, you would then go over to an orthopedic surgeon and they would fix you up and then they would send you home. So we would look at, when did you come in? Did you come in for something that was expected or unexpected? So a heart attack would be unexpected. And then when you were in, who were you seen by? So you would have been seen by a cardiologist and an orthopedic surgeon. And then when did you leave? And then those pieces of information are coded, and that is how the hospital will get paid. And that information is very similar across all of the different countries. So the coding is called ICD-10, and it's a coding classification that's pretty universal internationally. And so what we do is we take that information and we risk adjust it. So if I go into hospital with a heart attack, that's going to be, I'll have a different risk to if Samantha goes or Sam goes in, because she's much younger than me and she's probably much fitter than I am. So her risk of surviving that is probably much better than my risk of surviving it. So then we try and level out the information. But for instance, if Sam went in, she's fitter than me, and something happened to her in hospital, then we know that there's something not quite right about the patient care in that specific organisation. So then we would flag to the organisation and say, for instance, a few years ago, there was a hospital in Bristol where one of the surgeons had had a stroke and came back and carried on doing surgery, but suddenly the babies were dying. So the babies that he was doing surgery on were dying, and it came out in the data. And then they looked back on that and understood that actually what had happened is that the surgeon had gone away, had a stroke, come back, and his fine motor skills weren't quite as developed as they had been before. So that's kind of, it's a very stark reminder of why this type of information is incredibly important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sam, I mean, talk to us. Your data analysis that you do is a very, very different field and a very different industry. But tell us a little bit more about what your day-to-day and your team's day-to-days look like.
So I think my preconception of what data analysts do are very different to reality. I used to think that people were just stuck behind screens, just coding furiously all day, not actually speaking to people. But those soft skills are a massive, massive part of my role. So in a day, I might have quite a few calls, natural work team calls, as we call them. So might be people across different teams coming together to share ideas, work out project plans and timelines, working out who needs data from which other team, dependent on what system, what developments are needed. So a lot of the time, data analysis is a small part of a big project that you need to be very, very aware of the whole part of the where you fit in, basically. So as well as those calls, I might have one-to-ones with people, trying to put some meat on the bones of those projects. A lot of time spent updating leadership about progress, taking advice from them, and then doing independent work as well. So that analysis, and again, not just number crunching, but analysis on problems. What are the problems? What needs to be solved? So yeah, possibly quite different to what people might have expected.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, tell us a little bit about what's going on in Tesco at the moment, because I'm just thinking, I'm sure we can all familiarise ourselves with a Tesco superstore at the moment, and I'm always amazed whenever I go in there, everything that I need, they're still on the shelves, and there's a reason for that, and that's because of your team, isn't it, Sam? So tell us what sorts of things are, are going on a daily basis, and tell us about some of the seasonal campaigns as well that people may have some direct or indirect experience of.
So after 10 years at Tesco, I still got a buzz out of this stuff, and that's not me just putting it on. I genuinely find it absolutely fascinating. So I've been spending about 1 day a week in the office these days when I'm not working from home, and I overheard a conversation where they were forecasting for the Euros. So they were trying to work out how much beer to order, and obviously it's dependent on how well the home nations do. And I heard the guy saying we need to forecast based on what's best for Tesco rather than superstition. So that's one conversation, but when you think of how that reverberates through the whole supply chain, the extra trucks that are needed, the extra people in depot, the extra capacity in the warehouses, the implications of these decisions are absolutely huge. So that's it's kind of a trade-off between the operational day-to-day teams versus the more sort of development and change team that I'm in, where we might be looking at the algorithms for how do we react as quickly as we can to changes in demand. So there's those sort of two sides to it. There's the day-to-day versus the more sort of strategic way of operating.
Yeah. So, I mean, for example, when England beat Germany on Tuesday afternoon, which meant that they're going through to the next stage on Sunday, does that suddenly have an immediate impact on the amount of stock that you're going to get in?
Yeah, so we've got these continual replenishment systems. So the more that goes through the till, all that data gets aggregated up. And we order more from suppliers, and then the forecasts might flex, but also you need humans looking at that, making decisions. So yeah, then it's it still blows my mind, like I say. So they don't just have to think about how much extra demand is it. They have to see, would people in England behave the same as Scotland? Will people in Scotland still watch the game? How do we forecast that? So then I think they were looking at the data from the World Cup, and when England were in that, how did the people in Scotland behave then? Did they buy more beer? Did they buy more crisps? And then we have to work that out at store level as well. So a lot of that is very automated. People don't need to do much, but occasionally you'll have a crisis. So then it's all hands on deck. So you can never quite predict how things are going to pan out in terms of how systems are going to behave, how customers are going to behave, whether the distribution network can keep up. So many different factors.
Sure. And I mean, obviously the football and the Euros is a very immediate one at the moment, but are you also forecasting things like if there's a heat wave, does that mean we've got to get more barbecue meat out? And
Yeah.
do we need to get sort of paddling pools and, garden toys at the
Yeah,
ready?
the analytics behind weather are incredible. So if say it goes up to 25 degrees, in the southeast, people will behave differently to if it's 25 degrees in Scotland. In Scotland, people might get a bit more excited. So it might be something like salad goes up by 20% in Scotland, whereas it only goes up by 10% in the southeast. But
Yeah.
the level of accuracy you need in that forecasting is when you've got things like lettuce that are 3-day code life. If you get that a little bit wrong, the cost to Tesco is absolutely huge. So the incentive to invest in that sort of talent and that sort of system in Tesco is just so important. So yeah, you can easily make a wrong decision and it costs Tesco hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Sure. I mean, I find this absolutely fascinating, and I guess the role that you and your team play means that you're taking that decision away from a store manager who's making that on a whim. So a store manager who might think, oh well, England have won on Tuesday, we better get some more, beers and barbecue food in for the weekend. I mean, that sounds logical, but as you said, there's a science behind it.
Yeah, we used to, a lot of our decision making was very decentralized, and the store managers and the stock controllers, it was all in their hands. But now the level of analytics that we have and systems and processor capacity, we can put that back into head office now.
Sure. And look, I mean, Nina, I guess it's the same principle with the work that you do. So a hospital manager or a surgeon or a manager within each health setting, they need that data, and they need people like you and perhaps people like who are watching this at the moment in a few years' time to be able to provide that information and to interpret them for them. So I guess that's the service and that's the value that data analysts bring, isn't it?
Yeah, and you have to remember, so although we weren't directly involved in it, when COVID struck, you had data that was running through the system at an immense rate. So, you know, we didn't know day to day what was going to happen. The patient profile was changing all the time. People were coming in, you know, ICU beds were completely flooded. They had to understand where there was capacity elsewhere in the country because you couldn't take everybody in yourself. Most hospitals set up something called a gold command, which is where all of the senior executives would make themselves available, but they would also bring in people that were in ICU, in A&E, surgeons that would no longer be doing what they should be doing because there was no one to operate on, because no one was coming into hospital unless they had COVID. So all this information was running through the system, and it was about trying to understand, you know, where you could put in extra beds, which wards you could close, which wards you couldn't close, making sure that masks were put on not just staff, but also patients. So when we did some work originally in March, when the Italian hospitals were being flooded by patients, we managed to bring in their teams to speak to the rest of the world. And they immediately said, you know, put masks on your patients. Don't just put masks on those that have got COVID, but put them on everybody. Don't let anybody in through the door. Don't have anybody coming into A&E unless they are really ill. If they are really ill, don't let any of their relatives come in. Even things like one of the hospitals, the staff were really worried. And I think we forget that it was also really difficult for staff that didn't want to get COVID. So you had, you know, lots of people working in the hospital that were seeing this influx of patients and they had no idea what was going on. So one of the hospitals in the US actually put up a dashboard saying how much PPE they had left, so that staff knew that there was going to be enough PPE to last them through for the next few weeks, so they weren't having to worry. And the other thing is, how long can you spend in that full PPE? So, you know, the Italians were spending 6 hours. So in those 6 hours, they weren't allowed to go and get food or go to the toilet or anything. They were in those, you know, outfits, and they would stay in those outfits for 6 hours. And so that became a thing that they had to practice. They called it doffing and donning. So the idea is putting it on, you're donning and then doffing. And that was something that, you know, they said practice that so that your staff get very used to that, so they feel comfortable with it. So there was so much information, but it was really about picking out the right bits that could have an immediate impact.
Of course.
And I think, you know, some of the stuff that Sam was talking about from a healthcare perspective, you can only dream about being able to be that refined in terms of knowing what your patient needs, you know, what your customer needs, and being able to cater to them to that extent.
Yeah. No, it's clearly it's a really fascinating topic, and the use of data analysis across a range of different industries and careers is going to be is a really significant one. So, Sam, what do you find most enjoyable about your role?
I think having an impact on customers, knowing that you are developing algorithms or working through a process, or providing data that helps put food on people's plates or beer to people's football watching living rooms. So I think that's what I really love. I love being able to walk down the aisle of my local Tesco and saying I worked on something that helped that or helped that. So I think that's what's really great, and I love numbers, bit of a geek like that. So just bringing things to life in that sort of way, I think.
Sure. And Nina, for you, what do you find enjoyable about the role?
So it would be the same, actually. My customers being patients. You know, we did some work with one of the hospitals in the UK, and they compared their data to another hospital in the US, and what they found is that their patients that were coming in with a heart attack were not being treated as effectively. So they put in, but all they did was they just got the ambulance to come in and immediately send the patient to a different place. so that they could get scanned straight away, and that reduced their mortality by 25%. So for me, it's that I really love that. And actually, you know, I've only got GCSE maths, so I'm not a big maths brain like, you know, Sam. I'm not great. At least I didn't think I was particularly good with numbers. But I agree. I think there's something really wonderful about the way that data tells you different trends, and it gives you different types of information. And even in your regular life, you know, when you read stuff, it's so interesting to see how people behave and how that behavior is shaped and how it's similar across different countries and different organizations. So yeah, I can understand the inquiry.
Sure. Okay. So I mean, it sounds like you're both describing there's a so there's clearly a real level of curiosity about anyone who goes into data analytics, that you've got to be curious, haven't you, about what you're looking into to try and identify some solutions and some patterns, I guess. Yeah. Well, so on the flip question to that, then I'll ask you first, Nina. What's the most challenging aspects of the role? So what's the warts and all story to this? What should people be aware of before they embark on a career in data analysis?
Well, that's actually, so obviously it does take a little bit of working. So it's not, you know, something that is, I suppose it's not, well, I don't know if there are any downsides now that I think about it. Is that really biased? I feel like if you enjoy being curious and being able to give people information that they don't normally get, then I don't really think there are any downsides. Maybe I'm just seeing it from a different, I don't know. I think it's just it's a great thing to be involved in. It's really interesting. It's exciting. It touches every bit of society. Maybe I've just drunk the Kool-Aid. I don't know.
No, well, clearly, Nina, you've run the data analysis on your enjoyment levels throughout the week, and they're always peaking at sort of 9s and 10s. So, Sam, what about from your perspective? Are there any challenging aspects of the role? What's difficult about it?
I actually did think up one. Sometimes it can be challenging when leadership change their direction. So it could be that you're working on something, some sort of profitability project, and then they say, no, we want you to work on simplification now. But that's just the nature of Tesco and retail, that priorities can change. So that can be, you need to be quite resilient to that. And sometimes you'll spend time working through some analysis on whether something is viable, and you discover it's not viable, so then it just gets canned. So that can be slightly disappointing, but that was the only thing I could think of. I think it's a great field to work in.
Good, okay.
Actually, sorry, Gareth, and there is one thing, and that's when you have to give people bad information, like information that they're not expecting. So if you have to go to a hospital and say, actually, you're not performing very well on this, that is probably the downside. And you do get quite a lot of pushback when you're that person.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Okay, well, thank you. We're going to move on to the next section. And I can see some questions are being submitted, which is great. So do keep your questions coming in. We will definitely get through all of them today. So use the questions tab on your dashboard, type it in. It's only visible to me, and then I will direct it to our panelists. So look, I just wanted to have a discussion about how you get into data analysis. How do you get into the sorts of roles that that you perform or your teams perform? So, I mean, first question, and because Nina, I know you're really keen to dispel this myth that you've got to be brilliant at maths to go into data analysis. So, if I ask you the first question, which subjects might be useful for someone to do at school, so at GCSE level or A level, that will help them get an insight into this?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on what you, because the thing is, and I think this about everything actually, I think society as a whole is very broad, and what you want to do is very broad. So think about what you enjoy. So don't think about it in terms of data analytics, think about it in terms of what you enjoy. So if you enjoy law, then actually there will be a part of data analytics that goes into law that you could then refine further. Or if you like the idea of being, you know, doing something technical or being in the tech industry, then again, you know, there will be a data analytics element to that. And I think for me, I think that if you're good at maths, great. And obviously that's always a good thing to be good at in terms of life skills. But I also think pick something that you really enjoy, because it's not always about being good at data analytics. I think it's about finding something that you're good, that you enjoy, and then actually the way that data analytics is working now, inevitably it probably will touch on whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, and also Sam, from a personal experience, tell us about the subjects that you did in your own career route.
My stance is actually identical to yours, Nina. I think do what you enjoy, and your enthusiasm for whatever path you choose will be infectious, and people will choose to employ you on that rather than you forcing yourself to do maths or French if it's not your bag. My path was, gosh, school was a long time ago now. I can barely remember what I studied. But I studied international management with French at university in Manchester. That was a really broad degree. There was marketing, statistics, accounting, history of business, loads of things. So yeah, I think just follow what you enjoy, excel in it, work hard, and that should open up doors for you. I feel I should have a more sort of direct answer than that, but it feels like my stance is very similar to Nina's in that sometimes you just have to let life carry you for what you enjoy and what you feel passionate about.
Sure. Well, yeah, look, I think it's really important to share that as well. We've run other webinars in the past where particular A levels have been absolutely crucial. So, for example, if you wanted to become a doctor, then it's absolutely crucial that you've done maths, chemistry, biology, or physics at A level, and you follow that very prescriptive route through into med school. But for I think for most of the careers that we discuss, and this one is going to be exactly the same, the choice of subjects is not going to be crucial. So if you don't choose the right subject at GCSE or A level, that's not going to impact your ability to go into this career as you go on. What about university? So do you think having a degree is really essential? So thinking about your team that you've got at Tesco, Sam, do all of them, do you really want them to be graduates? How important is that? Are there any particular degrees that you'd expect them to have done?
Within the development and change team, I think everyone does have a degree, but very varied. I remember there was an analyst who had a history degree. We do have a lot that have got maths degrees and science. So I think having done a degree is probably more important than the actual subject. I think having gone to uni, it's really helped me. It's helped my time management, give me confidence in how to deliver things, and being able to work with people to deliver something. I think that's a really key skill as well. So scoping, trying to understand what the problem is that you're trying to solve, trying to generate ideas and trying to deliver through other people. I certainly found that really invaluable.
Sure. And Nina, your organisation hasn't quite got the same level of resources as Tesco have, but would you only be looking to employ someone who had a degree? How important to you is that?
Yeah, so generally, actually, we work with data scientists from all over the world. Before this, I worked for a company called Dr. Foster, which had a massive team of analysts as well. And generally, they all had at least a degree. And often, if they didn't have a specific maths degree, they would do a master's in something that was maybe statistical in nature. So, but we did have, a mixture similar to Sam. So we had a couple of medics, people that had done their medical degrees and decided that they wanted to do data analytics instead of medicine. So more than anything, it's just, I think these days for lots of careers, it's just seen as a basic, as a foundation, and then you build on that. So again, I would say pick something that you enjoy, do a subject that you think you're going to do well in, and then, hopefully a few modules of that will be around some type of data analyst. But if not, you can go away and do a master's afterwards and bring in your data elements there. So I think everybody that I know that works in this field has got a degree as a minimum.
Sure. Okay. I know there's a question that's come in that says, what's the best route in? Is it through a degree or an apprenticeship? And Funnily enough, I'm sat at my desk for the first time in about 15 months today, and just so happens on my desk I've got the National Apprenticeship Services brochure on here with a list of A to Z of apprenticeship. There you go, I'm not making it up. And just flicking through to see, there is a Data Analyst apprenticeship program, or at least there was when this document was produced. So if there's not now, there probably will be, and that's at level 4 level. So there are other routes into the industry as well. So you should know, the National Apprenticeship Service is definitely the website to have a look at if you want to have a look at any apprenticeship opportunities that there are. But by the looks of it, if there aren't now, there certainly have been in the past, and I'm sure there will be in the future, because that's something that many companies are looking to try and develop. So just putting the qualifications to one side, what are the sorts of skills and qualities that someone in your team would have, Sam?
So as well as the analytical skills, Nina, you mentioned about being curious. I think that's really important as well, having a very inquisitive mind, questioning everything. Yeah, questioning the status quo. Why do we do this? Do we need to do this? What happens if we do it a different way? Yeah, so having a critical mind, enjoying it. We've talked about that a lot. That shines through, and when you work with people as well, if you're trying to sell a vision, trying to land a project with people, you have to be able to engage with them. You have to be able to, in Tesco we call it taking people with you. So if you get challenges, being able to answer questions, being empathetic, listening to concerns and take advice from other teams. So just sort of reiterating what I said earlier on about it's not just sitting behind a screen crunching numbers. It's being very well-rounded and being able to deliver projects and using data to support that, rather than just analysing data in itself. And then using data to paint that picture as well, being able to really articulate what your findings are.
Yeah, and then, I mean, Nina, similar question to you really, but I'm aware that we probably all of us have an element of confirmation bias about us, and it's very easy to look at data and to use it to tell the particular narrative that you want. So, I mean, how removed do you need to be from any sort of confirmation bias to be a really good data analyst?
That's a really good question, actually. I think the thing is that I think you need to be able to use more than just the data. So I think the data gives you your initial information, and then you have to be able to go away and look at other sources to figure out whether it's really telling you what you think it's telling you. So for instance, we were talking about A&E numbers, as I said to you, and the US, one of the hospitals in the US from Chicago said, yeah, we've also seen an increase in A&E numbers. But theirs was due to gun crime, because it turns out when it gets warm, people are more likely to shoot each other. Now, if I hadn't have asked them, I would have no idea. So the data, I think, will give you an initial trend or something, but then I think you do have to have enough nous to understand that you need to go away and then speak to the people that are involved in that particular data set or that piece of information, and then understand from them why it's being driven in the way that it is.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a really good opportunity for me to fly the flag for history, which was the A level I did. And certainly one of the skills that you learn in history is that interpretation of sources and data and information, and being able to question and challenge what it's telling you. And I guess more importantly, what isn't being, what you're not seeing, or perhaps what isn't being told as well, is is really important. So I think that's it's a really pertinent point to raise that you both have done there around those skills and qualities that are needed. I mean, the next question I was asked you is, what experiences could someone gain, outside of school that will help them to perhaps gain a bit of understanding about what a data analyst does, or whether they'd be good at it, Nina?
So there are lots of courses that you can get online, and there's lots of TED Talks as well around this type of information, that you could absolutely go away and think about. And then actually analyze the way that you receive information through apps, through TikTok, through games that you're playing, because actually all of them will be giving you an analysis of your performance, of what other people are doing right now, and think about, why are they sending me this information? Because actually you're constantly being pushed or given data analytics in lots of different formats that you might not understand that you're really seeing. And even things like, R numbers, we're all familiar with what an R number is now, but 18 months ago, we wouldn't have known what an R number was. No one was talking about infection rates or vaccination numbers or any of those things. So I think there's lots of stuff out there that you can do, look at. There's lots of stuff that you can read as well. But have a look at your own life and think about what's impacting you right now. So the next time your phone pings and it gives you, I don't know, you have 300 friends on TikTok right now. Think about why they're giving you that information. What do they want you to do with that data? And also, how did they calculate that information?
Yeah, that's it. So we're all just so exposed to it all the time, aren't we? Perhaps without even realising it. Yeah, it is having that curious mindset to perhaps challenge it and to give it a bit more consideration. Okay, more questions are coming through, and they look like some really great questions. I want to make sure we've got time to answer all of those. But for just next one from me, it's just looking at the prospects. So is this something that there's going to be more demand for in the future? And from everything you've just said there, it leads us to a very natural conclusion, I think, which is that there's going to be huge demand for data and analysts in the future. I mean, is there anything you can add to that? Are there any particular industries, Nina, you're aware of where there's a real surge in data analysis at the moment?
Yeah, so obviously health is a big one, as you would expect. Tech as well, fintech, which is basically financial services. More and more, you're starting to see that. And I really think even in housing, more and more materials are being built by 3D printers rather than being sourced naturally. So all of this stuff has to be analysed. Where do you put the next town? What does that look like? Climate control. If you're looking at geography now, that's going to be massive. Sustainability, understanding how we live more sustainably, how we we recycle the materials that we're already using, how we make sure that we're importing sustainably. So I think all of those industries will need more and more of that type of data analytical capacity.
Yeah, and then Sam, from Tesco's perspective, is the team much bigger now than it has been in the past? Is it likely to get bigger?
There is a real push on automation, so automation and simplification. So I suppose you could say that there is energy being put into sustainable developments rather than day-to-day kind of operational people.
Okay. So yes, definitely there's going to be demand for the role. And then the second question I've got in there, and Sam, perhaps you can answer this one first of all. What other careers might someone go into? So if you start as a data analyst, what other opportunities might that open for you?
Within Tesco, if you start off as an analyst, you could then become a lead analytics manager. So that's managing a team of analysts. But the more senior you get, I think Nina, you said this as well, the less actual analysis you'd be doing. So it's more about creating that vision for the project, engagement work with other teams, trying to find out the problems that need to be solved. But the great thing about Tesco is that you can be an analyst in supply chain, in the commercial teams, marketing teams, the teams that build systems, store facing teams. So if you start at Tesco and you love data, the world's your oyster, really.
Sure. Yeah, okay. Nina, any other suggestions? Or perhaps if I flip that question the other way, are there professions or roles that people may have done that lead quite nicely into a data analyst?
Yeah, so I think, like I said before, I think it's about, I don't think there's anything that you could have done that wouldn't necessarily be applicable to a data analyst. And data analysts that I've worked with have gone on, to work for McKinsey, Pricewaterhouse, and DeepMind, which is the health version of Google, IBM. AI is obviously quite big now, and that's I think what Sam was talking about around automation. So how do you create algorithms for artificial intelligence? Because although we think it's robots, it's not really. It's computers learning from masses and masses of information. And all of those things, they feed data analytics feeds perfectly into that. So even self-driving cars, that will be based on data analysis, telecommunications, all of these things will be will have started off as a piece of code and a trend, and there's just a lot of it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks. Well, look, without any further ado, I'm now going to go to the questions that have been submitted, and you've still got time. So if you do want to ask a question to either Nina or Sam, or clarify anything that's been discussed already, this is your opportunity to do so now. So let me ask the questions that have come in. There's some really good ones in here. So first of all, I'm going to guess this one's probably for you, Sam. How much do they overestimate for stock? So, or how much of an exact science is stock control?
So you've got the day-to-day human decision-making element, and then you've got the algorithms that are in the background. So for the majority of the time, the system does take care of itself, but it's things that the system doesn't know about. The system doesn't know that Father's Day is coming up or that Christmas is coming up. So one doesn't work without the other. You need the human element and the analysis element, and you need the automation. But yes, we each day we're probably within about a couple of percent of the total sales forecasts.
Yeah.
But even that, the amount of waste runs into a lot of money, but so many projects, and it's obviously crucial to our purpose to reduce that.
Sure. Okay. What qualifications have Nina and Sam completed? So Nina, why don't you just talk us through your got the qualification section on your CV?
So I did history as well at A-level, and I also did English and psychology, and then I did a history and politics degree. So 0 maths generally, but then I was lucky enough to I worked in pharmaceuticals basically, and so that's kind of where I understood data, reading kind of, clinical trial papers, etc., etc. And then from that, I fell into the data analytics business because we were actually creating a product for the pharmaceutical industry that looked at healthcare data. So not really your conventional path, but actually I think more and more as I speak to people, I don't think there is necessarily a very conventional path necessarily into, data analytics.
Sure. And then Sam, just remind us, you said that the title of the degree course that you did, but what was it again?
International management with French, so lots of different businessy things. And I spent a year in France at a French business school, which was really hard, but absolutely adored it.
Yeah.
So I think I did one little module on supply chain management. It's not really something that people have widely heard of. It's not a sort of well-known career path like marketing or human resources. But yeah, I think if you just apply yourself, work hard, then anything is a path into analytics, as we've said.
Sure. I think what's coming through loud and clear, talking about the information we're not getting, what you're not saying to us is that you did A-level and further A-level maths, and then you've gone on to do a degree in statistics or advanced maths or advanced physics to get that. So hopefully there we can dispel a few of the myths around this particular career. For Sam, I find your job really interesting, and I'm very curious on what experience is needed. Furthermore, I'd like to know what different variables are there that have the most impact on your stock change.
Sorry, there were two questions there, and I think I forgot the first one when you said the second one.
Okay, so what experience is needed? So what experience would you like to see from someone joining your team? Let's take that one first, and then we'll...
Clearly, I've got a very short memory span. A lot of our analysts join straight from uni, so I think the recruitment team look for people who are well-rounded. If they were in maybe clubs and societies at uni or school, so probably that sort of experience is important at that point. I think that proves that when we take on people that have had jobs before, it doesn't really matter what they were, as long as they can, use those transferable skills to say they know how to influence people, they know how to plan their time and deliver projects and visions. So I wouldn't say it's too restricted at all.
Yeah. Okay. And then the second part of the question was, it's another one about stock change. I'd like to know what different variables are there that have the most impact on your stock change?
Stock change, so level of orders. So probably the previous day's sales. So if we sell twice as much as we expected, the system forecast will sort of react to that. So there's that, there's weather. The pandemic was just a wild time for forecasting and ordering, absolutely insane. There were some long hours worked, let me tell you. What else has an impact? Competitors. We did Aldi price match, so we were losing some market share to Aldi because their prices were so competitive. So we had to come up with, people came up with a whole big marketing campaign, and there were forecasting project teams related to that. And then could our distribution teams and depots cope with all that? So it's a whole wide picture, really.
Okay, thank you. And then the final question that's been submitted, if you have got one, I'm going to give you about a minute or so to try and submit it. But I'm going to ask both of you to answer this one. So I'll start with you, Nina. What kind of applications do you use, and would learning how to use them before going into the job market be a helpful step up?
So we use a lot of R, which is a free package that's available. And to be honest with you, I think it depends if you're, because they change so quickly, and Sam will know this better than I do, to be honest with you, but they're constantly being updated. So if you are able to do something maybe in your last year of university, and there's lots of free courses as well, I think, that are available where you can, make yourself sort of at least understand them slightly, then maybe that is a benefit. But I don't think it's ever held anybody back that we've employed, not knowing a specific package, because generally you can learn it. But I don't know if Sam has a different response.
I would only say it from an enthusiasm point of view, where if you've got two candidates who are exactly the same, except that one loves SQL and they've done it in their spare time as a hobby, it's possible that that person might be recruited just because they clearly want to drive themselves forward. But in terms of the actual technicalities about it, like you say, I don't think that it would, I don't think not having it would hold you back.
Oh, okay. So it's not as if there's a universal system that vast majority of companies use, not like Excel, which is, you imagine,
No.
most people have a good working knowledge of that. So there's lots of different software packages that are out there. Okay, there is another question that's been submitted. I'm going to ask both of you. I think it's probably directed towards Sam, but do you ever gather the data yourself / go into the field? Or, I guess, the alternative is that, does everything just appear on a screen in front of you?
Shall I start with, or Neela, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, go on, Sam, if you start with that one.
Yeah, we collect the data ourselves in the, I suppose, virtual field. Because the data, because there are ridiculous amounts of data, you can, if you really needed to, you could drill down into exactly when someone's club card was used in a store and what they bought. There's that level of data. Imagine that for every single customer. So quite often you're extracting data that's hundreds of millions of rows. So you have to understand how to sort of put it into manageable format and where to find different things. And there's a really great culture of learning within the analyst community, where we've got a Teams channel and people will say, oh, who knows which playpen I need to go to find barcodes or something. So everyone really supports each other, and yeah, there's just almost unlimited amounts of data that you need to extract yourself sometimes.
Sure, no, good question. And Nina, let me apply the same question to you, although the context might be slightly different in the role that you do.
Yeah, so for us, we have a data partner, which is Leuven University Hospitals, and they process the data for us. And the bit that we would do is the extra bit. So for instance, I was saying to you yesterday that a lot of countries are seeing that cancer patients are now much further along than they would have expected them to be. But that's not the same in the US. So at the moment, we're putting together a survey to send out to those hospitals to collect additional information to understand what screening systems they've got in place. So we know actually that some of the US hospitals have remote screening, and a lot of that remote screening in the community was still available, whereas actually that's not necessarily the case in Europe. So that's the additional information that we're now going out to collect. We're also doing something around the impact of COVID. And so that, again, we are sending out the survey to the hospitals to ask specific questions to supplement what we've already seen in the data. Because what we're keen to do is not just understand what happened to the patients that had COVID, but also understand what happened to all those patients that didn't have COVID, but should have come into hospital for a procedure or didn't come in for a stroke. You know, what happened to them? Did they die? Are they still alive? Are they okay? So it's really just to supplement what we're already seeing within the data set.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Well, look, I hope that answered the question that was submitted then. We've probably run out of time to ask any more questions now, but I have asked and the questions have been answered that have been submitted. So hopefully that's provided some insight for you. Just before we go, Sam, you were keen for people to be aware of where they can look to have a look at any potential vacancies or opportunities with Tesco. So just talk us through what you might find out from looking at the website, which you can see on your screen at the moment.
So this website gives details of the internships and grad schemes that are available. So the internship, the intake that we've just had, I think they have just finished their second year of uni. And then the grad schemes are for people who've just finished uni. So if you really, really want to get into Tesco in the next few years, have a look at that and see what we can do for you.
Sure, and that's of course across a range of different roles and areas of the business. And so just to clarify, I don't think we said this at the front, but just tell everyone, Sam, where is Tesco's base in the UK?
We're in Welwyn Garden City. I live in Bournemouth, so it's a nice, gentle 25-minute drive. But we're mainly working from home, and technology has really enabled that, and it's hard to remember what things were like before. So in terms of employers in Hertfordshire, it's an amazing campus as well. We've got a gym on site. We've got canteens. It's really green and lovely. So yeah, I can't recommend it enough, to be honest.
Sure, so it's smack bang in the middle of Hertfordshire. So just looking at where we've got registrations from, so there's a few of you from sort of Watford or Bushy area, but I know there's some from Monk's Walk School, which is probably within the stone's throw of the Tesco headquarters as well. So yeah, it's a really, really good site, and it's a huge employer on your doorstep as well. So the question has just come in, and I do want to ask it because it's come in. So it's can we do this role just after A level? So I think when we asked this earlier, both Sam and Nina recommended going to university really will open up lots of opportunities and windows for you. But it's not a prescriptive route, is it, Nina, that to be a data analyst you have to have a degree or those letters after your name?
No, but I would say if you were going to try and do something in the data analysis world after A levels, I would strongly recommend that you've got a maths A level, I think, for that. And I don't know what Sam thinks, but I feel like if you're going to miss university, but you've got a really good maths A level, then you could contact, say all the data analytical teams in hospitals, for instance, to see if they've got any vacancies or if they're happy to train somebody up rather than you going to university. So if you already know that's what you want to do and you've got a good, strong mathematical mind, then absolutely have a look online, see which jobs you like the look of, or which organisations you'd like to work for, and just send them a CV and say, look, I don't want to go to university. Is there any way that you could help me get to where I want to be? I know I want to be a data analyst. I'm brilliant at maths. And actually that might well be a way in. I don't want to narrow it down, because I feel like if you're really good and you already know that's what you want to do, then, you know, absolutely go away and see if you can get your foot through the door.
Sure. Yeah, no, sounds really good advice. And as we mentioned, is the National Apprenticeship Service. So Google that, National Apprenticeship Service. That will provide details of any live apprenticeship vacancies at the moment that you may be able to access straight from A level. You may even be able to access them straight from GCSE level, but it looks like it's probably likely to be at a level 4 level. Just finally for us to share with you, this is so the QR code you can see on your screen here. If you take a picture of that, that's going to take you directly through to our page on the HOP website, where you can see all the previous webinars we've run. So we've run different webinars featuring different careers and different industries for over the last year now. So there's about 30 plus of them on there. Some of them may be related to some of the things that we've spoken about today. So you may find there's some synergies there to have a look at. Do have a look at our social media platforms as well. So particularly the YouTube one. This video will be available on there tomorrow, as indeed all the previous ones will be as well. So can I just conclude by firstly thanking all of you who have attended live and have submitted questions today. We really hope you found that useful, and we really hope that the conversations you've been able to have with Nina and Sam will help inform you and give you a little bit more information about what the role of a data analyst looks like. Let me mostly though thank both Nina and Sam for giving up their time this afternoon and for sharing their own experiences with you. So Nina and Sam, thanks ever so much to you and to your organisations as well for giving you the availability.
Good luck to everyone. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was great, Sam. I really learned a lot, so that was really interesting.
Ditto, thanks.
Good. See, it's a two-way thing. It's informative for us as much as it is for you watching, we hope as well. So very, very best of luck for your future career and the career decisions that you make. Please use HOP as a guide to help you make some of those decisions. Thanks for watching, and look forward to hearing from you and seeing you again soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.